our son just after we left Yale, he never
He didn't
swam
like the
again.
weather, it was very
Well,
hot.
I'm kind of hoping he
weather was
burns out before college, you know, my son. Actually, my husband and I were a little
guide for birds in Florida because Bill Prante has a lot of field knowledge that he, writes little anecdotal facts in that book that I love. And so anyway, he was my editor for the bird section, and each section in my book, which I have 150 marine animals, invertebrate and fish, and mammals, of course, reptiles, and 150 birds. But this book has over 500 plants and animals in all, and with fun facts, conservation facts, and I think it's a fun book. I wrote it for 4th graders, believe it or not, even though it's an 8th grade reading level. But I just really wanted, it's a book that I would buy if I were at Everglades National Park, because I feel like the information in it is very interesting compared to typical field guides, which just tell you how large something is and things like that. So today, before we begin, when people think of the Everglades, and I have a map here, this is one of the maps. This is actually one of the last things that got done for the book, and it took 10 years to find someone to do it for me. I wanted to show people where the Everglades are and what are the different habitats that you find in the Everglades. And so, did any of you think that the Everglades was smaller than this? It's basically all of South Florida, and then the Kissimmee chain lakes, up near Orlando so usually you think of this as the Everglades. People that I talk to, they think it's this, but this is actually the greater Everglades ecosystem. And the reason this is considered one ecosystem is because the water from Orlando in the Kissimmee Lakes, chain of lakes, flows south to Lake Okeechobee, and then during the rainy season, the lake would overflow and the water would flow down to Florida Bay, which is down here, and the Gulf of Mexico. And there were even a couple spots on the East Coast that the fresh water would flow out to the ocean. So I'm sure you all know that now we have canals that also send water this way to the Caloosahatchee River and then also out to the St. Lucie River, so that the Lake Okeechobee doesn't overflow into neighborhoods that were built in what used to be the Everglades. Wait, why is that slide on there? I'll just go back to it. So tonight we're going to talk about conservation and plants and animals, well, birds tonight. We're going to talk about the birds that are either threatened, endangered, used to be endangered, or we even have some examples of birds that are now extinct, and since man has been here developing the land. So the U.S. Endangered Species Act of 1973 is a legal protection to declining populations of these threatened plants and animals, and not just plants and animals, any kind of living organism. I just saw in the news that there's a bacteria that they want to put on the endangered species list. But also it's to protect the habitats where these animals live. And I'm going to show you in the map on the next slide what we're doing now to help with the problem of these plants and animals not having anywhere to live, basically. Threatened species, you probably already know this. That's a term used for an ant, plant, or living thing that might become endangered. And endangered means that there's a chance they could actually become extinct, that they will either be extinct in the area where a significant portion of their range, or extinct in the whole world. So the examples we're going to look at tonight are going to fall into one of these categories of causes of population decline, from habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, unsustainable harvesting, which is, in other words, this happens a lot with marine animals. I also just saw this in the news a few weeks ago, and I forget the organization that filed the lawsuit. Not a lawsuit. They filed to have horseshoe crabs listed as an endangered animal. And you saw that too? I see some people shaking their heads. And I think, is it the sanderling, or there's some bird that, it is a sanderling?
They depend on those up in Maryland every year, and they're depleting them.
Yeah, yeah, and the sad thing is, it's not even like pollution is killing them, or it's humans are drawing blood for medical purposes, and they're dying, and so unsustainable harvesting, I think that's a great example. It's not going to be on the slides tonight because it's not a bird, but you can see with the web of life that even something you wouldn't think of, the horseshoe crab eggs, it's not even the horseshoe crab that they eat, it's their eggs. So you can imagine they have to have a lot of eggs for all the birds to eat, and then to still have enough eggs for some to become adult horseshoe crabs, which also they take 10 years to become viable to make eggs. So that's scary. Okay, so that's what I mean by unsustainable harvesting. Usually we think of fishing, overfishing, and we know birds love fish. So this is a huge issue if you love birds, to make sure that limits are being set and enforced. And I even talk in my marine section about the idea of having kind of like how we have national parks that conserve land where tourists can go, and there's an economy that comes with that. You can have a marine habitat that also scuba divers will come, and it will create an economy, but you're not there catching fish, you're there to look at what's there. So some more problem things that happen: climate change, disease, invasive species, toxins, excessive nutrients on land and in the waterways. Okay, but I want to start with, and I'm going to go back to it, the number one, anybody know what the number one threat to all living things is?
Overpopulation.
It's connected to that, but they call it something else. Anyone else know? What's that?
Development.
Okay, habitat loss, right?
Loss.
Exactly. So habitat loss or fragmentation is the number one threat in the world. And I just wanted to share this with you. This is actually in my book. Archie Carr, if you're looking for a good book to read, A Naturalist in Florida is one of my favorite books. It's by Archie Carr. He was a professor at University of Florida, and he's famous for sea turtle conservation. He wrote some books. I think it's called The Wayward Road was his famous book. But anyway, he said to protect an animal, you have got to know where it is, not just once in a while, but all the time. So so many animals go through stages of life where, they might start on land and end in the saltwater, or they might start in the freshwater and end in the saltwater. You have birds. I mean, birds are the most incredible migrators of all. They, I can't think of what the bird is right now, that goes basically from the North Pole to the South Pole almost every year, which is incredible. But this year, and you're not going to be able to read that print, so I'll just read the first sentence. It says, the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act was signed into law. Did anyone read about this? In 2022 as a conservation measure to protect connected pieces of natural, this isn't here. I'll just tell you. So right here, this is the corridor. These are the opportunity areas, the light green, and then these are the conserved lands. And as you can see, it's fragmented. There's, for a migrating animal, it would be very hard to go from here to here on land. And it may seem like, well, what does that have to do with birds? Well, we also said that the land is connected with the flow of water, which, birds use those areas to feed. So it's all connected. There's a man, I don't know if any of you heard of Carlton Ward Jr. He did a trip by foot from Florida Bay all the way up to Georgia to sort of bring this, and he's a National Geographic photographer, and he brought this issue to the Florida Senate, and they actually agreed that this was a priority for them and that they're going to really try to work to get these opportunity areas as conserved lands so that if someone were walking, like a bear or a panther, they would be able to go straight up to Georgia without crossing traffic and things like that. So it's really great news for all wildlife. So I wanted to start with that one. Okay, let's get into the animals. So I thought I would just share, highlight some of the conservation stories from my book. And if any of you has something to share about that animal, maybe something you've experienced or some knowledge that you have or even a question, please feel free to, be part of the presentation. So the eastern screech owl, owls are nocturnal, which means these adorable little creatures are rarely seen during the day unless you are lucky enough to spot one sleeping in a tree. Eastern screech owls begin nesting in spring when 2 to 6 eggs are laid inside a tree cavity or nest box. The female incubates the eggs for about 1 month and stays with the nestlings for another month. At night, the male brings food to his family. After the hatchlings fledge, they will continue to roost with their parents for several more weeks. At night in spring, listen for their hoarse-like whinnies and trills. Many of you heard the screech owls?
Yes.
Okay, because they're everywhere, these little guys. They're only about that big. And this is, if you're a beginning birder, this is a great bird to start with. Mine are actually winning as we speak. So I have a lot of oak trees in my yard, and that's where they really like to hang out. We can help save owls by not using rat poison. If owls eat mice or rats that have been poisoned, they become poisoned too. And Stephanie's shaking her head because screech owls, in fact, I just saw on Instagram, it wasn't poison though, its tree got
The one
cut
from
down.
today?
Yeah, the one from today.
Yeah, I just posted that today. The
Yeah.
tree, somebody came and were tree trimming and they fell on the ground and the 2 siblings were found dead and that one was alive. So he's in care right now.
Little guy,
Yeah.
little guy. Yeah, life is hard in the big city, I'll tell you. I know that it's a common problem here. A lot of, Stephanie and I were talking about this earlier, in the city, a lot of residents don't really, are a bit fearful of nature. And so a lot of poison is used and things like that. And it really is detrimental to, so this is an example of an animal that's not threatened. It's not on the endangered list. It doesn't have any legal protections yet. But it's one of those situations where by not using poison, we can help them make sure that they never get on the list, that they continue to thrive. Hey, does anyone have any screech owl stories they want to share?
We have lots, right?
Huh?
Helping farmer rescue people here, probably have lots.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
That's, what is the, Stephanie, you probably know, how many screech owls a year do we take?
Oh my gosh.
Wait, I have it. Stephanie sent it to me today. Hold on, I have it.
That's a lot.
I guys sent to the species list.
It's right here. Because I wanted to do a little trivia. I had a few questions for you guys after. What are we talking about? Oh, the Eastern. Yeah, I'm like, what does it start with? Eastern screech owl. 567.
Wow.
And this is historic intakes. This is a flyer that she found. The highest was that I could find was the brown pelican at 9,000, 9,147. So it's a good amount. Okay, moving on. The brown-headed cowbird. Brown-headed cowbirds have been steadily expanding their range into South Florida with very little effort. They're called brood parasites because they don't build their nests. Female cowbirds lay their eggs in the nests of other bird species, including much smaller warblers, sparrows, and vireos. If you've never seen this, Google it. It's incredible to see this tiny little bird feeding its little babies, and then there's this giant baby, and she's just there, just frantically trying to feed all these kids, and one clearly doesn't belong there, but she doesn't care, Many bird species don't realize the cowbird eggs are not their own and will raise the chicks as if they were. This often results in resources being taken from their own chicks and thus compromising their breeding success. And this is a picture of a male here. So what's the conservation story? Well, this has to do with habitat fragmentation. When wooded areas are cleared and fragmented, cowbirds are able to expand their range while other bird species become threatened. Because if you have a forest, cowbirds don't go in forests. They only go in areas that line the, where the open areas line the forest.
I've never seen those in our park.
So they do. It's kind of like the weeds that you see, when you kill the grass. It's like that's like perfect conditions for the weeds. Just like where did they come from? I don't know, but the cowbirds love having land cleared.
We just had one, but I think it was pretty rare, right?
Yeah, we had a bronze cowbird.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is, like, there's only been, like, a few sightings down here in South Florida, so.
Yeah, that's true.
They kind of, like, spotted around.
I don't even know if that's in the book here.
Yeah, we were, like, when we got it, it took us a second, we were like, wait.
Oh, it came in the hospital.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
wow.
recently, yeah.
It just got released, like, a week ago.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you guys are here. My son found a tern with a broken wing, and it was a Sunday, I was like, oh, I can take it, because I was like, the rats are gonna get it if I have, and I have cats, and so I was like, oh, take it to the seabird station, no problem. All right, the yellow-rumped warbler. This is an I find this story very interesting. I see stories like this all the time, how climate change is affecting the behavior of animals. And actually the bird talk I went to here years ago was the researcher in the Keys, the bird, maybe you guys know his name, I forget his name, he researches the roseate spoonbills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we saw, that was a great talk.
Yeah.
Oh, you were there for that?
Yes.
That was a great talk,
That was a
right?
great talk.
I think he came last year too.
Oh, he did,
I think
okay.
so.
Yeah, and his-
They moved, the roseates are moving.
Yeah,
They're
and
just like, when you talked about where they, at the bay, at the Everglades Bay, Florida Bay.
Yeah.
That's where they used to be.
Yeah.
They're not there.
Exactly.
And we were, last Wednesday, we went up to Hatchie in Great Cave. You've ever been up there?
no,
They're there.
and like he said,
Yeah, they're just moving, people are just showing pictures all over birding sites that they're all over each of the east and west of Florida.
Yeah.
Moved.
it's true, and it was interesting talk because he said, there are some birds that need the water level just so. It can't be too deep, it's like Goldilocks, it can't be too deep, can't be, it's gotta be just right. So the areas where they used to feed in the Keys to feed their young, that water level has changed, and so they're basically moving north.
They're doing well, when we're seeing, that's what he said.
Yeah, they're doing well. They've adapted to that condition, and trees even plants are doing this too. Plants are migrating. So the yellow-rumped warblers are one of the most common warblers in North America. By the way, I have a little at the top. You can see the size of the bird, 5.5 inches, and then it tells you if it just comes here in the winter or if it's a year-round resident. That's what that's for. So these are the little guys. They hawk flying insects from the air, eat fruit, and even pick insects from the surface of the ocean and rivers, as well as among washed-up seaweed along the coast. I haven't seen that, but that would be cool to see a passerine, as they say, not a shorebird, actually in the seaweed picking out bugs. Myrtle warblers from the east and Audubon's warblers from the mountainous west are now both considered yellow-rumped warbler subspecies. Myrtle warblers are named after their habit of feeding on the berries of wax myrtles during winter when insects become scarce. So think science, climate change. So if this bird is coming to eat berries at a certain time of year, and climate change is changing when we get rain and the temperatures and things like that, well, you probably have noticed in your own yard, things are starting to do weird things. And not blooming when they're supposed to bloom, or they bloom too fast, or the fruit comes too fast, and then they drop because, you know, they started too soon. So think science. Climate change is altering when and where plants produce leaves, fruits, and seeds. As a result, the times and places insects and birds are found are also changing. So again, this is that web of life where you touch one part and, you know, it's just going to affect the domino effect. Okay, before I start with the bald eagle, we had a fun fact that Stephanie shared with me. How many bald eagles do you think have been here at the seabird station? Zero, that's a good guess. It's close. Huh? Oh, several. I thought you said zero. I was like, it's close to zero.
I know we have had them, but I don't know how many.
It's 4, right?
Mhm.
4.
I was gonna say 5.
Yeah?
I was gonna say 5.
Could you imagine being here that day? Having one of these big guys come in? That's another fun thing to Google, the call of an eagle. It's not the call that, well, I'll say here. The handsome bald eagle has been the national bird of the United States of America since 1782. In winter, a mated pair of bald eagles build an enormous nest on top of a tall tree, usually near water. Incubation takes about 1 month, and the young fledge about 2.5 months. The juveniles stay with their parents for 6 more weeks as they learn how to hunt. Surprisingly, the majestic bald eagle calls you hear on TV are the calls of a red-tailed hawk. And the eagle sounds more like a chicken or something. It's like not what you would think. Think conservation. In the 1960s, bald eagles were in danger of extinction. I don't know if any of you knew that.
Yeah.
This was news to me when I researched the book. In 73, the Endangered Species Act helped to protect their habitats. The chemical DDT was banned, and bald eagles have since made a remarkable recovery. So I talk about this a lot in my book, migrating birds. This is the prairie warbler that comes down in the winter. And I just find it so fascinating where these birds come from and these other lives that they live in faraway places. So if you don't see them in your neighborhood anymore, you definitely would want to say, well, what's happening in that other house that they live at? You know, maybe there's a problem. So conservation is a worldwide issue that we all really need to work together on. Contrary to its name, the prairie warbler is found in scrubby fields and open woodlands. 2 subspecies are found in Florida, the eastern race that winters throughout the greater Everglades, and the Endangered race that lives year-round in mangrove forests. 2 totally different habitats. And even their summer habitat is again, totally different. Think conservation. In states like Missouri and Kentucky, the American Bird Conservancy is working to restore more than 100,000 acres of nesting woodland habitat for prairie warblers. Okay, the endemic Florida scrub jay. Anyone ever seen a Florida scrub jay? Okay, was it Jonathan Dickinson State Park?
Yes.
I think that's where all of us Miami people go to see this bird. It's extremely rare, but Florida, there are so many, like Archbald Biological Station, which is in Central Florida. They are expanding in just great ways. They're, partnering with ranchers and there's even an Air Force property, and they really have a pretty nice area where they're trying to keep this bird from being in too small of a space. Like you probably heard the story of the Florida panther, how it almost went extinct because it started inbreeding because it couldn't get to the other populations, and so their DNA became weakened, and they had to bring in panthers from other bloodlines and work on getting these lands connected so that they can sort of migrate more and mix with other groups more. And the same is true for the Florida scrub jay. It's always exciting news when they find this guy in a new habitat that has been conserved for that purpose. So the Florida scrub jays are a federally threatened endemic species. Endemic means they only live in Florida, they don't live anywhere else in the world. That can only be found in a few very dry scrub habitats in peninsular Florida. Florida scrub jay pairs mate for life, and other members of their family help to feed and protect nestlings and juveniles. In spring and summer, they mostly eat grasshoppers and caterpillars. But in fall, Florida scrub jays cache up to 8,000 acorns to be dug up and eaten throughout the winter when insects are scarce. Development and fire suppression have reduced Florida scrub jay populations by more than 95% over the past 100 years. Survival of the Florida scrub jay depends on protecting and connecting more scrub habitat to help keep their species genetically diverse and thriving. Do you have any cute stories about this bird?
We haven't gotten any that I know of, at least since I've been here.
I don't think so.
But they're fun to watch. They remind me of, kind of like the blue jays, but maybe even better. Because blue jays are a little rough, they're like the gangsters of the bird world. But I love blue jays just because they're intelligent. Some people, because they're so loud and they can sometimes bully the other animals. But they are good sentinels. Like when my cats were kittens, if I heard the blue jays, I knew there was a hawk in the yard because they would always wah wah, be screaming their heads off. But yeah, these birds live in a family and they're not shy. If you went to go see them, you would literally be able to see like the family sort of living together. They're pretty cool. Here's another rare bird that is rarely seen at Pelican Harbor Seabird Station. The eastern meadowlark. I've never seen this bird. Has anyone? You have? These are more in central Florida, right? I think.
I've seen it many times, but not recently here, but,
Yeah, I think these are
fields.
Yeah, these are more like if in a place you would have fields and.
Right, and not just in Florida, because I've seen them, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, this is a very famous bird because of its beautiful song.
And they are beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of sit up at the top of the, I've seen footage of them. They're very proud singers. They sort of get up on that fence post and go to town. In prairies, pastures, and open pine woods, the eastern meadowlark may be found sitting on fence posts or foraging on the ground for insects and seeds. The male eastern meadowlark claims its territory of about 6 acres of open grassy habitat by singing a beautifully melodic set of breezy whistles reminiscent of times past. Females build a nest by themselves, a cup of woven grass and bark hidden on the ground, often complete with a domed roof also made of woven grasses. Farm bill conservation programs help private landowners and farmers conserve natural resources like clean water and fertile soil, a benefit shared by animals like the eastern meadowlark. So this is a story of a bird that they tried to bring back to Everglades National Park, and last I heard, they were not successful. A member of the thrush family, the eastern bluebirds, live and breed in pine flatwoods, prairies, or pastures with scattered trees. This is another bird that's very common, like in out west and stuff. You'll see these everywhere. Bluebirds have struggled to survive in the Everglades because many trees with cavities for nesting were either cut down or are being used by non-native bird species like European starlings and house sparrows. To help support that, conservationists have installed nest boxes throughout bluebird habitats. Listen for their churly call or its song, a series of musical notes. So I put down here in 1997, 47 eastern bluebirds were translocated from Big Cypress National Preserve to the pinelands of Everglades National Park after bluebird populations were extirpated there in the 1960s. Extirpated just means became extinct. So in other words, there were no more of them just in that area. Now this might be one of the best, is it hot in here or is it just me? No? Do you guys mind? I have to take my sweater. I'm sorry. I'm always cold. And
It was a little stuffy in here earlier.
How are we doing on time?
It's 7:30.
Oh, good. It's all this hair we have. So this is one of my favorite birds, just because it's so endangered that, and I'll start at the bottom. Did I put it on the? Or is it? It must be. No. Okay, I don't know what I was thinking of, but anyway, this bird is so endangered that they have a few of them in a like tented area in a field, and it's just dire. I mean, it's like any day now this bird could go extinct. It's very nerve-wracking, but they're doing a good job and they're having some success. I know because they nest on the ground that they have problems with ants, and so what they finally decided to do was just to sort of like a zoo, you know, raise them in an enclosed area and then release them after they're already adults. Of the 12 described grasshopper sparrow subspecies, 2 live in Florida. The eastern grasshopper sparrow, that is a fairly common winter resident of open grassy habitats, and the critically and federally endangered subspecies, the Florida grasshopper sparrow, which is endemic to the northern Everglades and found in only a few areas of conserved dry prairie habitat. Fewer than 100 Florida grasshopper sparrows currently exist. However, there is a captive breeding program where birds are captured from the wild and placed in protective outdoor enclosures to breed, and then the young are eventually released. This program shows great promise in preventing this little-known Florida native from meeting extinction. Listen for its high-pitched tick-tock Z song or tip call. Protecting more prairie preserves could help increase the number of Florida grasshopper sparrow families and thereby increase the populations. Can anyone? Oh, genetic diversity, resistance to disease, and chance for survival. And this picture was taken by one of the scientists inside the enclosure.
I didn't realize there was so few of those left.
Isn't that amazing?
That's crazy. We got one.
We had a talk here once with the scientists from there.
Everybody remember something?
I don't remember.
Were
that.
they from Archibald?
It was up around, then we went there.
They're doing the thing where they have to.
Oh, I think it's FWC, isn't it? Is it FWC that does it?
No, I don't think it was FWC.
The prairie that you see when you drive to Gainesville.
Well, it's on 27, because we actually went right by.
And you could see it.
Yeah, you can see it.
Wow.
It was on 27, they came, I'm pretty sure there was a talk from them here.
Yeah.
But I don't think, it was pre-COVID, so I don't know.
Oh,
We lost
yeah.
a few years. Do you remember yourself? Do you remember yourself?
There's a bird that I can't think of. There's a famous, and I can't think of his name right now. He worked at Archibald. He just passed away recently. And he worked with scrub jays. He did scrub jay research for like 40 years. What was his name? I should talked to him many times. But I think he was involved in a bird similar to this one that actually did go extinct, where they tried so hard and it just, you know, with all their best efforts, it's a challenge. And I realized today too that I left out one of the best extinctions, well, not best, but you know, most heartbreaking extinction stories, the ivory-billed woodpecker.
Oh.
Forgot about that guy. Now I gotta write another book. Okay, so anyone want to guess whose picture that is? This is one of my, yeah, what did you say? I think you said it.
No, I was, it's a snail kite, I did look up, I saw this snail kite, but the name, it's not Audubon's, right? No.
So this is Max Stone. Maybe you've heard of him. He's a National Geographic photographer, and he has an Everglades book. It's a tabletop book, and it's beautiful. And this is the bird that's on the cover of the book. But he set up cameras, and he actually tried to get this shot for months. And if you read his book, he talks about it. He visualizes photos, and then he makes them happen, which I think is fascinating. And so actually under the water there is a little thing that he built to put apple snails in. And then he had cameras set up in front of the bird. The cover shot is facing the bird, and then he allowed me to use this side shot of the bird. So I can just picture him in the water there, you know, finally getting his moment. I mean, he has to travel to the location, and then so many false starts, and he finally, you know, got this beautiful shot. In the 1960s, the number of snail kites in Florida probably dropped to less than 25. Talk about scary. By working to restore the flow of water in the Everglades, their numbers increased to nearly 1,000 by 1994. The still federally endangered snail kite, formerly known as the Everglades kite, has a long curved beak specially adapted to extract its sole food source, the apple snail, from its shell. While searching for apple snails in freshwater marshes and large lakes, the snail kite hovers low over the water, then quickly drops down to take its prize. Work is still being done to manage the quality and quantity of water flowing through the greater Everglades. You've probably heard in the news about the water issues and the algae blooms, and that's called nutrient pollution. There's too much phosphorus in the water, and it makes algae grow more than it should. And so, you know, we just need more space for all that water when it rains, so that we don't flood neighborhoods. And it's a big problem, but they're working on it, and you know, hopefully we're able to fix it before it's too late.
We were just featured on an episode of Jeff Corwin's show.
Oh, I heard about this, and I meant to see it.
The episode also talked about snail kites and about the invasive snails.
Yes, the island.
And the snail kites are actually adapting to be able to break the shells of those heavier shelled invasive species.
Yeah, that invasive species has actually been helpful in terms of its comeback. I don't know that it, you know, yeah, sometimes the non-natives aren't so bad. You know, the invasives.
Well, it's interesting that the birds are adapting to be able to eat those.
Yeah.
More difficult.
Like, I have crazy amounts of different types of lizards in my yard, and I thought, you know, I guess it's just more food for my hawks, and they figure it out. I mean, the tree frogs, it does bother me that there's so many brown tree frogs now, you know, that I know they eat the green tree, the natives, but it's like, we have so many animals. It's good when you see something eating a non-native, you know, it's like, yeah.
Like iguanas.
Huh?
Like iguanas.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they're small.
What was the name of that show again?
It's Jeff Corwin is the conservationist, and it's a big expedition for that. Or, well, you guys are
Wildlife Nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wildlife Nation.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what
And you guys got to meet him?
Yeah. He's our keynote speaker at our Belgian party. April 4th.
Oh, maybe that's where I saw it, because I'm planning on going to that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'll have to get his autograph.
Yeah.
He's very cute. And a good person.
Yeah.
Okay, seaside sparrow. There are 6 living seaside sparrow subspecies that permanently inhabit the saltwater marshes along the Atlantic and Gulf Coast of North America. One exception, the endangered Cape Sable seaside sparrow, is endemic to Florida and resides in the grassy freshwater marshes of Big Cypress National Preserve and Everglades National Park. Another subspecies, the dusky seaside sparrow, became extinct in 1990 due to loss of habitat along the coastal marshes of Merritt Island, where they built I don't know if that's when was NASA built?
'60s.
In the 60s.
Or early sixties, I think 58 or something, I suppose.
So I believe this habitat is right next to NASA. I mean, not to point fingers or anything, but just saying.
1962 is when I was built.
62?
Yeah, 62.
Wood stork. Wood storks breed during the dry season. Now, this is another bird like the roseate spoonbill that needs the water to be just so in order to be able to have success with their breeding. They breed during the dry season when wet areas begin to dry up and fish become concentrated into smaller pools, making them easier to catch. These federally threatened species may fly as much as 80 miles from their nesting rookeries to find fish in pools of water 6 to 10 inches deep. Determining when and how much water is released from Lake Okeechobee, because that's a job of the Army Corps of Engineers. They're in charge of this whole schedule of, when to hold the water, when to release the water. And obviously, if nature is pouring too much, it's raining too much, then they'll sometimes have to release because maybe they didn't release enough earlier for, the sugar growers to have their water. So we're working on that. We need to get rid of the water earlier so that when it does pour, we can, not have to dump so much all at once. But anyway, where was I? Determining when and how much water is released from Lake Okeechobee is critical to the success of breeding wood storks. If too much water is released while wood storks are raising their young, the small pools of fish they depend on become washed away. Think conservation. A breeding pair of wood storks needs about 440 pounds of fish to feed themselves and their young during one nesting season. That's amazing. And I think they like the mosquito fish. They like those real tiny fish.
Good place to go is the Cotahatchee. We were just there last winter, I mentioned earlier, and they're breeding the young. They must have about 50 or 60.
And where is this?
It's in Palm Beach. It's a wonderful place to go, but it's the Palm Beach Water District, the South Florida Water District in Palm Beach. They made wetlands. It's like if you're going to the Everglades and you're going out to Endangered Trail, it's similar to that, but much bigger. And they built it, and the birds are there. And you can see the roseate, you can see, but there's so many wood storks now. They're the first that are nesting, and they must have maybe 40 nests started.
That's
Okay, you can be up close. You can get up really close.
really kind of like Endangered Trail when the cormorants and they're all like you could like reach over and very cool to be that close.
But they're all going there instead of we were just at Endangered Trail 3 days ago, and there were almost no birds.
No birds.
There's too much water.
Yeah.
It's all about the water, but they control it up at Palm Beach, and the water is.
It's just how they like it.
All they're doing is cleaning the water that people are disposed of. So it's a water filtration, just what the Everglades was built for. And it's done by the Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
So everybody here to check it out. It's a wonderful thing to do. You'll love it. And if you go to one, the other one's only 3 miles away.
Now we'll have to maybe when I'm done, we can look at the map and you can sort of, because I have other parks listed. Do you know what big park is near it?
It's like right by Delray.
It's in Delray.
Oh, it's on the coast.
No,
Oh yeah, Palm Beach.
It's
Okay.
right off the best way to go is the turnpike, so it's only maybe a mile off of the off of the turnpike and Atlantic. Maybe I'll show you the map, but it's for everyone. It's a great place to go to get up close to see what you can do to build the right type of environment. We got rid of a lot of these places. Again, this is an Everglades, but they made Everglades. Now it looks like the Everglades again.
Yeah, right.
The birds came.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, even plants. I was at a preserve in Naples that they wanted to bring it back as a native wild area, and they burned it because this is Florida and uplands like to burn, and saw palmetto and like so many, it was incredible. I saw the before and after picture. I'm like, you didn't plant that? They're like, no, it just came back. It all just came back. It's amazing. Also in the Everglades, I hate to even hear about it, but the Burmese pythons do go up and are, hurting birds too when they're nesting. It's, we need more python hunters. So pretty in pink, like the very rare American flamingo, roseate spoonbills are more common along the coast. However, they may also be found in freshwater wetlands, especially in fall after nesting season. Spoonbills use their uniquely designed bills to feel for and capture prey while moving their bills back and forth underwater in shallow wading pools. Roseate spoonbills need shallow, concentrated pools of fish to raise their young, and for this reason have begun to breed further north and inland due to rising sea levels in Florida Bay. See that? Hot off the press, that little bit. Think history. By the early 1900s, wading bird populations were being wiped out by hunters looking to sell feathers to decorate women's hats. In 1913, Massachusetts what it is.
They banned the trade.
What is it?
They got rid of it. They banned it.
Yeah, they banned the trade of feathers, followed by a federal ban in 1918, which I love that that just goes to show you can change the world. Just a couple ladies, a couple crazy ladies, I would have been in that group. I would have been like, yeah, let's go. Let's get rid of this. Okay, we have a few more. Now, I don't know if you know this. This was another interesting thing that I learned when I was doing my research. Most bird field guides are listed, the birds are listed in order of evolution. So can you guess which bird is one of the oldest birds that can actually be tied in with the dinosaurs? Duck.
Oh.
Well, not necessarily the widgeon, but it's a duck species. So ducks are way cooler than I realized. They fly super fast. I don't remember which duck it is that could go like 60 miles an hour or something. They fly really high when they're migrating. They're like up with the planes. And when you see them on the ground, they're just like, waddling around like they don't really have many skills. But they're really cool birds. The American widgeons mostly eat aquatic and terrestrial plants and sometimes even steal food from diving ducks. They migrate during the day in smaller flocks in spring and larger flocks in fall. Before flying south in the fall, American widgeons undergo one complete molt, which makes them unable to fly for weeks. They partially molt again in March before flying back to their breeding grounds. Think conservation. The prairie pothole region is a large expanse of wetlands in the northern Great Plains that ducks depend on for summertime nesting. And a lot of that land, you see what has happened in Florida with all the development. And those lands out west are actually starting to be developed in the same way. Hopefully we can learn our lesson from the areas that we have maybe not grown so well with, so that we can conserve and make sure that there is this area, these wildlife corridors for the animals in all of these different states. Lesser scup. Large flocks of these diving ducks swim mostly around coastal bays and estuaries, foraging for plant matter, mollusks, crustaceans, and other aquatic invertebrates. Scups are so good at surface diving that even 6-week-old chicks can dive up to 60 feet, or I should say dive down to 60 feet, and stay underwater as long as 25 seconds. Scups skitter on water before taking flight. Think conservation. In summer, lesser scups raise their young with the food, water, and shelter provided by the forest habitats. of Canada and Alaska. And I just think that's amazing. So we want to keep an eye on those areas, make sure that they keep their forests. Black skimmers, this is another frequent resident here. I think you said it was, of all the birds that I'm featuring today, this is, I could be wrong.
Probably the most.
I'm forgetting now.
I think I did.
Who did?
I did.
Oh, really?
About 3 or 4 years ago. Up
Gee.
the warehouse.
At a,
Right here.
it was at a warehouse?
It was, they down in the warehouse.
That's so
Well,
strange.
you know, they.
Do they nest on
They
roofs?
nest on roofs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, we've seen 54 historically. And yeah, we've done a lot of rescues. The ones that I've seen that we've done re-nest for are in Doral, the warehouses by the airport.
Yeah, we used to do the count there around.
Yeah.
For years, yeah.
So we've re-nested there and we've also rescued from Doral, from the nest sites there.
That's like at my kids' school, they have, oh gosh, now the name's gonna, the killdeer. I heard him first, I was like, what? You know, I'm like, I know that sound from, I was telling you that I lived on Sanibel, so that sound is just very common. I hear that, you know, all day long. Black skimmers catch food while flying over the ocean's surface and skimming the water with their open mouth, collecting small fish with their longer bottom bill. Listen for their nasal barking call. They rely on touch rather than sight to catch fish and therefore mainly forage at night, dusk, or dawn when there is less competition with other birds. Black skimmers nest on the beach and are state-designated threatened species due to habitat loss and predation. Listen for their nasal barking call. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has a plan to maintain a minimum statewide annual breeding population of 4,000 pairs of black skimmers. That's a good amount. I hope they have a lot of counters to do all that counting. The last bird, so the last 4 birds I'm featuring here are, well, except for the non-native. I have one non-native I'm going to end with. But this is, this bird has the largest numbers of the, well, they're not endangered, they're threatened, so. The least tern, this is the one that I think you said this year was the most. You had like 90 least terns. This is a common, the least tern, American oyster catcher, snowy plover, and black skimmer are all state-designated threatened species. All 4 species nests are vulnerable because they lay their eggs on bare sand, which can easily be disturbed by predators and humans. I used to let my dog run the beach, and after doing the book, I now know there were no nests on the beach that I was at, but it's still, you know, if there are shorebirds there, you want to be polite. If they need to rest, if they've just migrated or just went fishing, they need to digest their food. They, you know, shouldn't have to fly away and look for a new spot. So I definitely keep my dogs on leashes now at the beach. All 4 species nests are vulnerable because they lay their eggs on bare sand, which can easily be disturbed by predators and humans. During one of the cutest courting rituals, males, least terns, attempt to capture a female's attention by offering her a fish to eat. I saw that on YouTube. Very cute. Sweet love, look for yellow legs and bill.
I'm not cooking it too.
Huh? And cooking it, yeah. We can help beach nesting birds by conserving coastal habitats so they have a place to forage for food, rest peacefully, and raise their young. Not big on Miami's agenda. As you can see, when you go out there, there's not much beach left.
That's the other bird that's nesting on the, rooftops.
Yeah, that's what you know, so they've adapted, right?
Yeah.
Which, you know, you wish they could have the beach, but I guess it's better than nothing. American oyster catchers are quirky birds that feed primarily on mollusks and occasionally on jellyfish, worms, and insects. Their long chisel-shaped coral red bills isn't it so cute? It's like a Dr. Seuss character or something.
They're not on our shoes, I mean, it's too many feet. Beaches have been trashed.
You have these where you live?
I'm sorry?
Do you have these where you live?
No, I was saying that our beaches have been so dredged. I grew up here and there used to be so much wildlife on the beaches, but between the dredging and the construction of high rises right on the beaches, we've destroyed our environment.
I know. Daniela Levine-Cava has been really good, you know, about, like, she has the ban for the fertilizer to keep the waters clean. I hope she stays here forever. I don't want her to go to Tallahassee because, you know, it takes time to change things and change people's minds. Even just using mangroves as barriers instead of concrete walls and things like that. It's like, you know, we did it all the wrong way, but that doesn't mean we can't go back and hopefully try to fix some of these things, you know, a little bit anyway. But yeah, on Sanibel, the west coast of Florida, it was the same. You would walk out and see cucumbers and conch and, I mean, you name it. It was all there in the water, on the beach. Yeah. Poor water quality and habitat loss are two reasons why American oyster catchers are a state-designated threatened species. Marine mollusks are the oyster catcher's primary food source, so they are both negatively affected by changes in water quality caused by pollution. This is back to that web of life situation where, you know, poor water quality, the mollusks are dying, the birds are not going to stay because there's nothing to eat. And then I had to end with the cutest little guy, the snowy plover. The adorable snowy plover is one of Florida's most threatened birds as a result of disturbances on the sandy beaches where it lives. Up to 3 times a year in spring and summer, both parents take turns incubating 3 speckled eggs in a simple scrape nest on the sand, lined with seashells and other beach debris. There might be nothing on earth cuter than a shorebird chick. Snowy plover sitting on the egg here in this picture, and then the newly hatched chick on the right. These photos were taken by Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. The FWC has a plan to maintain a yearly statewide population of only 500 snowy plover breeding pairs along the Gulf Coast. Currently, however, there are only about 150 pairs. So, anybody know, does this bird breed over here? I don't know. I'm gonna have to research when I go home. No?
Might. We haven't seen.
Okay. And then I ended with, where did it go? Oh, this is the old one. Okay, well, I'll just tell you about it. What's that?
Oh, just saying that the birds that we used to see, like, that she was mentioning, because we grew up here, like, you know, the difference. And it has been here, just the development and quality of the water, the dying off of the.
Yeah, especially because, as you can see, these animals have very specific diets.
Exactly.
So if they're 1 or 2 or 3 main, you know, sources of food, I mean, obviously some animals are better at adapting than others. You know, they're called generalists when they'll eat anything, like an omnivore that'll basically eat whatever's available. But I'll just tell you about the last bird I was going to share. The monk parakeet is a non-native, and as you know, in Miami, you can hear the squawking, and you'll see a flock of all different species of parrots flying overhead, or parakeets. And in my research, I found out, and I thought this was amazing, there's something called the Carolina parakeet that became extinct, and it was a native parakeet to North America. There were trying to think, now I'm forgetting if there were 2. But anyway, the Carolina parakeet, it became extinct, I'm guessing now, I'm going by memory, maybe 50 years ago, or I forget. So we did have a native parrot, you know, all the parrots you see, they're all from South America that have been brought here. So, but they're still, they're pretty harmless, I think. I don't know of any that, the starlings and the cavity nesters are the ones that are troublesome for the native birds because they use up all the spaces where there would be a box or, a hole that they could go in. And so it reduces their breeding. And if you want to learn more about breeding, I highly recommend this breeding bird atlas online. It's with the FWC. I did a lot of my research on that. Really good source to get very detailed information about every species that breeds in Florida. And then, like I said, Birds of Florida by Pranti. He's one of my favorite, that's my favorite bird book. I mean, my book is my favorite bird book. Aside from my book. No, I think they're tied, actually. I like them both. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. And keep up the, good work, conserving. Yes, if you're interested, I have books in the back that I'd be happy to sign, or if you want to purchase. Yes, I have. Let me get my. Let me get my.
So thank everyone for coming, and quick reminder, we have our twice a month cruises, and the Valentine's one is coming up. It's actually on the 13th. We still have Tuesday, we still have tickets available. It's a special one with champagne and chocolates, I think. And then our Healthy Party Gala is on April 4th, and our tickets are on our website. And Jeff
Brought a better pen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Not much of a good.
I have a pen if you don't.